Hi, I'm Schaffer the Darklord, and today we're going to talk about repro accessories for vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures. Hit it!
They say collect them all and the prize is we collect all 12 of them guys. Collect all 31, collect all 41, collect all 79. It's really 81. Collect them all.
Hey nerds, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please click like and subscribe. And also hit that bell so you can get notified of future content. So, repro. Yeah. Repro is short for reproduction. And in the world of toy collecting, it typically means unlicensed reproductions of accessories for vintage action figures. By all accounts, repro accessories for the vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures first started showing up in the 90s, likely around the time that the special editions were released in theaters, and when Hasbro took over Kenner and its Star Wars license and started releasing the Power of the Force 2 action figure line. Theoretically, this is because a number of young adults who'd grown up with Star Wars were now reinvigorated in their fandom and dug out their old childhood toys in the interest of collecting the vintage figures, only to discover that a number of their weapons and costume accessories had disappeared over the years. As a new collector, I only became aware of repro accessories a few months ago, and I only became aware of the controversy surrounding repro about a month after that. Well, perhaps controversy is too strong of a word, but there's definitely drama involved. Repro accessories are a very divisive topic among collectors. And as far as I can tell, opinions on this matter divide collectors into one of three camps. The first camp I'll call pro-repro. I would say that these are collectors who want complete figures in their collection, but lack the patience or the funds to track all of the original accessories down. I can relate to this. For the most part, these loose figures are pretty cheap to come by. Finding a complete vintage figure loose is going to be more expensive. But in some cases, just finding the vintage accessories for some of these figures can be as expensive or even more expensive than just buying another complete figure with all of the pieces intact. That's why in most cases, it's more cost effective to buy a complete vintage figure than it is to just buy the individual pieces that they're missing. Although there are instances where a collector can get lucky and find a good deal. Hold that thought though. We'll come back to that in a little bit. The second camp I will call no repro. These are collectors who are against using reproduction accessories in their own collections, but don't really have any feelings about how other collectors complete theirs. I can also relate to this. In some cases, the no repro crowd may even consider repro a scourge upon the collecting world. This is likely because they have been scammed by online sellers who have sold them what they thought was a complete vintage figure, only to later discover that some of the pieces involved were actually reproductions. I have not fallen victim to this yet, but if I ever do, and likely will, I would be furious. This is why it's important to always read a listing very carefully before making a purchase. In some cases, the collector didn't get scammed, but just got a little too excited. The third camp I will call anti-repro, because they are against repros for everyone. Now, it's no secret that all fandoms have their toxic gatekeeping contingent. And the tighter you zoom in upon one niche corner of that fandom, the toxic gatekeeping numbers may get smaller, but the voices of those that remain get louder. And in vintage Star Wars toy collecting, that element is as toxic as it is anywhere else. I would even argue that Star Wars fandom pioneered the toxic gatekeeping element. The anti-repro for everyone crowd will challenge the legitimacy of other people's collections because that collection includes a single Imperial blaster that was made by somebody other than Kenner after 1985. The worst members of this crowd will go as far as to ban users from social media groups for even a passive endorsement of repro accessories. And they've been known to flood the comments of other collectors' YouTube videos. I feel like people like this are so invested in the exclusivity of this elite club that they found themselves in that they feel compelled to maintain barriers to entry into their world. I mean, maintaining barriers to entry is the literal definition of gatekeeping. I do not care for this personality type in any community. Here are my feelings on the matter. I feel that anybody should be allowed to collect anything they want, however they want. Period. The fact of the matter is, we are living in a pretty terrible time. And if some middle-aged stranger out there finds some modicum of joy in collecting vintage toys, then they should be allowed to do so without being bullied or belittled for it. My feelings about this are really no different than my feelings are for astrology or religion. If somebody is doing something that gives them some sort of joy and purpose, and they aren't hurting anybody else in the process, then you should be allowed to, whether or not people agree with how you do it. To quote my all-time favorite webcomic, let people enjoy things. As far as my own collection is concerned, I feel I fall somewhere in between Camp 1 and Camp 2. I have a lot of original accessories in my collection, but I also have some repro accessories as well. And though I cannot overstate my encouragement that people be allowed to collect however they want, I do have some self-imposed restrictions on how I use repros in my collection. Handheld items. This means guns, canes, staffs, anything that can be held in a figure's hand. In this case, yes, I will use repro accessories to complete a figure. But those repro accessories have to be the correct color. If it was released black or gray or blue, then I need a repro that is the same color paired with the same figure. And they have to be quality repros. Oh yeah, there is definitely a spectrum of quality in the world of repro. And unfortunately, I found this out the hard way. I purchased a lot of accessories online. I didn't get to pick the pieces, so I got a number of pieces that I needed and a number of pieces that I already had the original versions for. And I'm glad that I did because I was able to compare them. This first go at repro was disappointing. The items are all 3D printed, so they're hard, they're brittle. They don't have the same give that the original accessories had. And also they were painted, and not very well. For example, I got a repro lightsaber for Farm Boy Luke that was painted the wrong shade of yellow, more of a dark gold. And not only was it brittle, but it didn't really fit in the figure very well. And when I tried to put it in, it scratched some of the paint off. But this is how one learns. But yeah, there are good repros. And I got some very good repro accessories from Stan Solo Creations. These are molded in colored plastic that's just soft enough that it has the same amount of give as the original accessories. I know that there are experts out there who can tell the difference, but this Farm Boy Luke yellow lightsaber, I cannot tell the difference between this and the original. Plastic costume pieces. These are things that a figure can wear that are molded from a soft, almost rubbery plastic. This includes helmets, masks, pouches, belts, hoods. As far as these are concerned, no, I only want these pieces original. Vinyl costume pieces. Yes, I have a number of original vinyl costume pieces, but I've also completed a few in my collection with reproductions. In fact, I just got a quality repro of the vinyl cape for Princess Leia in Bespin outfit, and I think it looks really good. Cloth costume pieces. This includes soft items that are worn by Jawa, Yoda, Emperor's Royal Guard, Bib Fortuna, etc. No, I will not include repros of cloth costume pieces in my collection. I've never actually seen any of these up close, but I've seen pictures online. They never look quite right. And remember earlier when I said hold that thought for later? Well, sometimes you can find a deal on a vintage costume piece that was made of cloth. And I got lucky and did find a deal. I got Luke Skywalker in Jedi Knight outfit in 1983. And probably about a week after I opened that figure, I lost his lightsaber and his cloth cape. Though I do still have his original Palace Blaster from 1983. I was able to replace his missing lightsaber with the Stan Solo Creations lightsaber, and then online I also found a really affordable deal on a vintage cloth cape for this figure. Being able to put this vintage item back on this vintage figure feels really nice. Also, as a side note, I have a very special repro item in my collection, and there's only one in the world that exists. As I mentioned, when I originally got this figure in 1983, I promptly lost the green lightsaber that Luke holds in his hand. My mom realized that I was upset by this, so she created a replacement for me. She colored a toothpick green with a marker, and then she made a little handle out of masking tape and a silver paint pen. When I recently went through all of my childhood figures in my 1980 Darth Vader collector's case, I was thrilled to discover that this replacement lightsaber my mom had made 40 plus years ago was still in the little accessory compartment, and it will remain with my Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. Was the late Alice Schaffer a pioneer of Star Wars repro accessories? I'm gonna say yes. Make it canon. And lastly, repro figures. No, never. And that includes using any figures from Hasbro's retro collection. Again, other collectors may include these in their collections, but I will not. Maybe someday I'll remember these repro accessories as a placeholder. Maybe someday I'll decide that I want to track down all of the original vintage accessories for my figures. I reserve the right to change the parameters of my collection at any point, as all collectors should be allowed to do. Now, I'm sure there are members of the anti-repro for everyone crowd who would say, well, just buy a complete vintage figure and then have the vintage accessories for it. But I don't want to buy new versions of these figures. I want my childhood figures to be complete again. The figures that I played with in the Iowa dirt as a little boy. And I'm sure I'll get comments on this video from that gatekeeping contingent telling me that my collection doesn't count. But I don't know, man. Seeing my 1978 big head Han Solo figure holding a blaster in his hand again for the first time in over 40 years makes me happy. And that does count for something. Maybe not in your book, but it certainly does in mine. And speaking of making me happy, you know what else makes me happy? I have some collection updates. I recently saw my dear friend Ingrid, who's been following my collection adventure, and she gifted me another entry for my collection. Rebel Commander. Theoretically, we saw this character in Empire Strikes Back during the scenes on Hoth, but I've never been certain that this actual guy was seen anywhere, specifically a Rebel Commander with this cop mustache. So I went back and rewatched all of these scenes very carefully, paying special attention to all of the background extras. For a brief moment, I thought it might be this guy, but nah, that handlebar mustache, he looks more like James Hetfield from Metallica. But then I found him. This guy. Oh yeah, that's the Rebel Commander figure. This dude was definitely a cop before he joined the rebellion. And I'm not just saying that because of the mustache. I'm saying that because of his posture, that hand on his belt, that vaguely judgmental expression and body language while not actually doing anything. Look, this dude is definitely a cop. This edition of Rebel Commander brings my total figure count to 49. Thank you, Ingrid. Oh, but there's more. I recently visited a store called Silver Age Comics in my neighborhood of Astoria, Queens, for reasons unrelated to this collection. But I was thrilled to discover that this store also has a number of loose vintage Star Wars action figures, and I found one that I needed for my collection. Princess Leia in Hoth outfit. You surely also remember this look from the Hoth scenes at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. But what you might not have remembered is that Princess Leia wears this outfit for most of the movie. 3/4 of the movie, in fact. In addition to wearing this outfit while commanding the rebels' evacuation from Echo Base during the Imperial assault, she also wore it when she kissed Luke, and when she kissed Han, and when she found herself inside the mouth of a giant asteroid worm, and when she first met Lando. And by the time we see her walking the halls of Cloud City, this outfit is visibly worse for wear. She doesn't change out of this outfit until the 1 hour 25 minute mark, when she changes into her Bespin gown. I didn't have this figure as a kid, but I love Princess Leia, I love this outfit, and I'm thrilled to add her to my collection as figure number 50. And lastly, I return to my beloved Museum of Nostalgia in Astoria, Queens. At this point, their loose vintage Kenner Star Wars action figure bins are pretty picked through by me, but I did find another addition for my collection, and another snowy character at that. Luke Skywalker in Hoth battle gear. You surely remember this character as well from the opening Hoth scenes in The Empire Strikes Back. This is the outfit that Luke wore when he went on patrol outside of Echo Base, and when he investigated a meteorite that landed nearby, and when he got attacked by a Wampa, and when he was imprisoned by the Wampa, and the first time that he ever used his Force pull powers, and when he cut that Wampa's arm off, and when he escaped the Wampa's cave, and when he hallucinated his dead mentor telling him to go to a place he'd never heard of, and when his friend Han showed up and used Luke's lightsaber, the only time in the original trilogy where we see a non-Force user wield a lightsaber, mind you, to keep him warm and save his life. Surely somebody out there has made a custom version of Luke Skywalker in Hoth battle gear that's covered in the guts of the Tauntaun that he stuffed inside. I'll just assume that it's out there, because I'm not going to look for it, because I don't want to see it. This edition of Luke Skywalker in Hoth battle gear brings my total figure count to 51. But also, this edition marks a collection milestone. Now, just in case you've forgotten, or in case you're new here, Kenner created 96 carded Star Wars action figures between 1978 and 1985. In 1985, they created the Power of the Force line, 2 years after Return of the Jedi had been released, in an attempt to reinvigorate the Star Wars brand. This collection launched with 15 brand new figures. Now, among those 15 new figures that came with the Power of the Force line, there were 2 Luke Skywalkers. There was Luke Skywalker in battle poncho and Luke Skywalker in Imperial Stormtrooper outfit. But I have no nostalgia for the final 15, and so my collection is just sticking with the figures representing the original trilogy films. These figures are known as the first 79, which again is really 81. And of the first 79, there were 5 Luke Skywalker figures released. And this edition of Luke Skywalker in Hoth battle gear means that I now have all of the Luke Skywalker figures of the first 79. Look at them. This is definitely a noteworthy milestone in my collection. Wow, that's great. What are your thoughts on repro accessories? Do you have some in your collection? Or would you never dream of doing such a thing? Let us know in the comments. Oh, and do you like the theme song from this series? Or do you just want to hear the rest of the lyrics in which I name drop the first 79 figures?
Greedo, Snaggle, Hammerhead, X-Wing pilot, Boba Fett, Walrus Man, Death Star droid, R5-D4 power droid.
Join us again next time as I continue my adventure to collect, restore, complete, and display the first 79 vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures. And if my Tauntaun freezes before I reach the first marker, then I'll see you in hell. Yeah!
79. Collect them all in the prize.